Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Kodiak Shack podcast. Today we have Rex and Blake coming to you from the test world, which is super exciting. I have read a lot of stuff that Rex has worked on over the years, so it's really good chance for me to get a chance to talk to Rex, kind of pick his brain, and then hear what Blake does too, because Rex is F-16s, and then Blake is a test engineer, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But welcome back, everybody, to the podcast, and we'll get right into it, talking to these guys. So Rex, go ahead and tell us about yourself. It's not a trap.
All right. Thanks for having us, Vader. This is exciting. This is my first time on a podcast, so hopefully I'll do you right, so to speak. All right. So I grew up in Michigan, northern Michigan. Went to Houghton Lake High School, graduated in 1993. Yes, I am old. Went to the academy. I was one of the first people from my small little school to end up going to the Air Force Academy. Graduated in 97. Actually got an engineering degree. I couldn't believe it. Barely passed. I was one of those guys who made it through mid-run, pretty low GPA. Got lucky, got a pilot slot, ended up going to doing a little bit of casual status up at McCord Air Force Base back when they had C-141s, which was pretty eye-opening. Spent 8 months up there skiing, learning a little bit about the Air Force and the heavy world. And no offense to the heavy community, because those guys have an awesome job, but knew it was not for me. Went to Columbus pilot training, had a great time in Columbus, Mississippi, learned how to fly in the weather. Got a fighter out of there, was super excited. We had a pretty small class of only 4 guys in T-38s. 2 of us went to fighters, 2 of us were essentially FAPEs, and those guys ended up going to fighters eventually. From there, standard Luke RTU 63rd, first assignment out to Aviano, then on to Osan as a IP, and then from there I got picked up to WIC. It was a class at 05 at weapons school with the Tomahawks there, and then went to Cannon Air Force Base, beautiful Cannon by the Sea. I was in the Block 30 Squadron, so the Mighty Crusaders 523, and did not spend a whole lot of time there. While I was there, we deployed. I went downrange to Balad Air Force Base as the wing patch, then left and pretty much PCS'd within a week to go back to Nellis to be an instructor. That was circa 07, right when the housing market was doing great. So I bought high, sold low when I left in 10. And I left in 10 to go to a test. And honestly, I've been in test since then. So separated from active duty in 2012. On Christmas Day, it was my Christmas present to myself. I became a reservist and have been here at Eglin doing various test missions and part of the CTF since 2016. And that's my story. I'll pass it off to Blake.
Yeah, well, before we get to Blake, that's just so much good stuff there. It's funny, before we were chatting, I was like, I'm actually a little nervous to talk to Rex because he's been doing test longer than I flew the F-16, and I was like, gosh, this is good stuff. So there's a lot of good knowledge that I'm definitely gonna be looking forward to get. But Blake, go ahead and give us your background.
Thanks again, Vader, for having us on. I hail from the southeast U.S., just a smattering of states, until I went to college at Auburn University and graduated there about 7 years ago. Have been in acquisitions and engineering since the Air Force allowed me to join the ranks, and so was out at Hill Air Force Base before getting here to Eglin. And when I was at Hill, my primary focus was air-to-ground weapons, air-to-ground munitions, particularly the small diameter bomb and the joint direct attack munition, the JDAM. Also did some work with the paveway. And really my focus when I was just cutting my teeth as a program manager and really a systems engineer, because a good program manager is going to know both requirements, systems engineering, and finance. When I was cutting my teeth out there on those programs, I learned the valuable lesson of knowing the CONOPS of the system that you're going after and knowing the warfighter's perspective of the system that you are charged to manage. And if you know the warfighter's perspective, it was so eye-opening to see how easy the job became, because when you satisfy the mission need, that's really the most important aspect of being in acquisition biz. And so I had the opportunity to do that and get in with another program for 6 months while I was there called the Advanced Tactical Acquisition Corps, which took me all over the United States for 6 months, answering a kind of a task force problem for half A5A. And that was essentially standing up an organic wargaming capability there at half A5 to go after the 4 or 5 year beyond FIDET problems that they were trying to solve as they did force design. Had the opportunity to do another program with US SOCOM and their acquisitions and understand more of how they do business, and really just trying to get as much experience so I could bring that to whatever my next assignment was, on how to do business better and understand the warfighter's mentality as best as I could. And so luckily I was able to get an assignment here at Eglin Air Force Base. On my RIF, it said Operational Flight Program Combined Task Force. What the heck does that even mean? It doesn't say squadron. Where am I going? I did request the job, but I was just still curious at the end of the day, even after talking to leadership here about the job, and had the opportunity to work F-15 QA while I was sitting outside the vault, and then was blessed the opportunity to be the F-16 flight commander, what we'll call it, and work with guys like Rex and all of our other reservist pilots, active duty pilots, and our test engineers, who really are, in my opinion, just the most hardworking, the best team, the highest standard of excellence dudes in fighter test. And did that, and was recently pushed into an ADO position. And so having the opportunity to be an assistant director of operations, my goal is to harness the O in operations and not so much the assistant portion, so I can still stay feet to the fire with the guys. And so that brings me to my current state.
Well, nice. Well, I'm glad to have both of you guys. And then, so for everybody, obviously, I've interacted a little bit with the test world, but I'll kind of add some color, and then I kind of want you guys to give the background. So the F-16 is probably where we do the most tests, just because it's one of our cheaper platforms to operate, and then one of our most prolific assets. So kind of for both of you, to get both of your perspectives on a day-to-day in the test world, what are you kind of doing? What are you working on? And who are you talking to while you're doing that stuff?
All right, well, I'll start. So for me, my position is test director. It's an interesting job here in that I'm not the boss. I'm the guy that takes the spears when we do things wrong. And then I try to give credit to the team when we do stuff right. We got a really small team, about 30 dudes. As you know, Blake here, he's one of our he was our flight chief. So he ran before he became an ADO. He ran the day-to-day ops, and it's really, really awesome kind of setup that we have. We are a dual MAGCOM unit, so we report to AFMC and ACC. There's good and bad to that. Our leadership is usually split between DT and OT. So AFMC is your blue patch, your traditional test pilot. And then typically the command is shared with ACC gray patch, typically a weapons school grad. The OFPCTF, a lot of letters there. Blake already told you what the acronym is essentially Operational Flight Program. That's software, right? And then Combined Test Force. It was an Eagle unit, originally started back in 2012. Vipers joined, I'm sorry, it was actually 2002 when it was stood up. Vipers joined pretty late in 2016, and the whole point is integrated test. So getting back to what is my day-to-day ops tempo like, one of my guys jokingly calls me the business development dude for the Air Force F-16. I got to remind myself daily that stay in my lane, and I'm a test director, so I got to make sure that the software and the hardware that's going into the airplane is managed and executed correctly, right? So with that, as a test director, we engage a lot with half. Pentagon folks, mostly the A5 and the 8s, right? So that's your requirements and your features type stuff. ACC A5, A, right? And then A5, A16 is the Viper division branch. Again, ACC requirements now at the lower level below the Pentagon. And then we also reach out to all the various agencies. So the program office, there's many. As Blake said, he came from weapons programs. The Viper has their own program office, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, and then alphabet soup after, right? WAM is where Vipers live. And there's a whole bunch of people. The joke is, whenever you want to blame something, you blame the SPO, and all the warfighters are like, well, who is that guy or gal? And it's not. It's a group. It's a group of people. They do amazing work most of the time, and then they have a lot of struggles too, as you'll probably hear as we go on with the whole acquisition cycle. We deal with software design. The F-16 is incredibly unique in the fact that we have organic software developed by the government. So recently, just out at Hill Air Force Base, and we interact with the 309th SWAG software engineering group. And within the group, there's squadrons, just like you would have an operational CAF squadron or our operational test squadron or developmental test squadron. They have a squadron mostly run by civil servants, a few contractors, and very, very, very few military. And they're in charge of developing the code for the OFP, which is really unique. They have 4 major subsystems at their control out there: the MMC, which is the Mission Modular Computer, the PDG, otherwise to Viper folks known as the MFDs, right, which is the multifunction displays. It's run by a core computer. And then upfront control, right, which is where we do our CNI and all the, as the Viper community knows, that's your left thumb. And we also code the mighty APG-68 mech scan radar. And, that thing is done pretty well in its lifetime, but getting ready to be replaced. So we're starting to work on the new ESA now, and that's coded by a contractor out at Northrop. And then the awesome part of the best part of this whole job is taking a product from beginning to end, taking it and delivering it to the CAF, which is where I've had most of my interaction with the Viper community and the bros and the gals out there doing God's work with the mighty Viper, and that's going and doing road shows. So, we get to interact not only, once a year doing a road show, but we've set up essentially a GroupMe even that we communicate out to the CAF leaders, mostly the weapons officers and the senior instructors. And it's kind of like their dial a chat, and we've got a lot of test dudes on there, and it's been really productive to kind of like squash WOMs, to help answer questions, to help put them in touch with people in various places that we know of that they don't, to help them out when they're struggling with loading new OFPs or something's just not working right. And that's kind of like the new norm, right? Most of the younger generation out there is all about the the interwebs and the books of faces and stuff. Not me, right? I'm well over 40, so I'm just trying to keep up. So having young guys out here to help with all that. But at the end of the day, man, that was a long answer to a very short question. I'm sorry about that, but we test the airplane. That's what we do.
One of the things before we hear kind of exactly what Blake is doing kind of on the day to day, can you explain the differences, and maybe Blake can, between DT and OT? So obviously test pilot's a blue patch. Like, what are they more focused on versus what is operational test more focused on?
Yeah, I can take that, Vader. So for a developmental test versus operational test, we're looking specifically from a DT's perspective at spec compliance. Really at the heart of the matter, whenever you take an F-16 out for a safety of flight mission. So we just flew a recent software tape release just on Friday, and We weren't throwing the F-16 in an operational environment. We were not performing operational maneuvers on the aircraft. We were running it through safety specification compliance. And that's essentially what developmental test is. It is to ensure that the aircraft is meeting what the spec says it should do. Now, operationally, that's not always the case. Whenever the spec says one thing, well, sometimes and most of the time, because no plan survives first contact, you need that system to perform something else. And so how do you ring it out? It's similar to what Paco Benitez said on your show a few weeks ago. You take it in an operational environment, whether single ship, two ship, or in a large force exercise. Black flag is an excellent idea and an excellent personification of that of the operational environment that you're going to test in. And so we do that here through the 85th Test and Evaluation Squadron, similar to the 422 Test and Evaluation Squadron, our brother counterparts out there at Nellis. And we're just ringing out the Viper day in and day out, not dedicated missions specific to the OFP, but all of our pilots are coming back after every mission and they're talking about how the OFP is performing, how the other ancillary systems and sensors and pods are performing in the operational environments that they're throwing them against, whether that be in our local LFEs with our F-22, F-35, T-38 at-air folks down the road, or just our daily ops amongst Eagles and F-16s going at it, to include the new F-15EX that we throw in the mix every day. And so that is truly the difference between DT and OT. And what we found is that they are not sequestered from each other. They actually have touch points that bring them much closer together than how we used to perform tests just a decade ago, particularly before the Viper was integrated into the OFP CTF. And what we found was this concept of integrated test, where there are so many overlapping tentacles of DT and OT that you can do the job faster. You can have a higher fidelity of operator satisfaction on the front end, because the later you integrate that operator satisfaction, that user experience, the less effective, operationally effective system you're going to have on the back end. Whereas you focus on spec compliance for DT, you're all about OSS&E, operational suitability, safety, and effectiveness, really the operational suitability and effectiveness on the back end. And so if you can blend those together, you're going to save money, you're going to save schedule, and you're going to be able to get a better product out the door to the brothers and sisters of CAF. I think that may have answered the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think as an outsider, it seems like you would be able to streamline testing, you would streamline the process to actually make it a faster rollout between DT and OT. I mean, one of the things, Rex, I know you've seen this, is the GBU 54 parent mounted page that, so for everybody who hasn't had to deal with this, it's the wing of the F-16, and then you have a rack that the GBU 54 gets attached to, and the interface for the pilot. As an outsider, it seems very much like what an engineer would write rather than what a pilot would want. So I could imagine that's probably one of those situations where it probably didn't have a lot of end user feedback in the rollout of that.
Yeah, Vader, that's a great example, and that's one of the things that we're trying really hard here. And when I say here, I'm really referring to the big collective. We call it an IPT, right? Integrated Product Team. To make sure that not only is it us, like our small team, providing some of the feedback, and our team is, a mix of DT and OT guys. So we do have our Blue Patch DT pilots right here day to day with us. But the thing that we do that's really cool, I think, is we have established what we call a Warfighter Council. So we started this about 3 or 4 years ago, and our IPT is, your 4 core areas, right? Talked about that we kind of interact with here. So you got flight test, which is us. You got the development group. Hill, we've got the SPO that, essentially manages the contract and the airframe overall. They have their own test division and acquisitions division. And then we bring in and then requirements, right? So ACC brings the paycheck as they go through the POM process, right? Program order of memorandum, I think. And that's how you get money, right? That's your PPB&E. If you want to know what that is, talk to someone like Blake, not me. I'm a fighter pilot. But anyway, we bring in the warfighters quarterly. We do it in two forms and fashion. So two times a year, and it's usually fall. So September, we're going to go out to Hill. And then in the spring, we go back out to Hill, and the warfighters are invited to come out, and we go through about a 3-day process where we spend half a day getting them spun up on what is in the current OFE we're working on and test. And then we go through essentially what we're calling agile requirements. So, agile with a big A is the new buzzword. If you're at all familiar with software design, it's getting things out quicker. That is the bottom line, right? To summarize. But when we bring the warfighters out, we try to bring out the experienced dudes that can speak for the unit, can speak for the wing, can speak for the MAGCOM, and we really, really want their inputs. Even though we're doing this quarterly, we actually really want to start reaching out, and we've tried to start reaching out digitally through emails, we use CV2, and we've started a SharePoint where guys can tip into our processes and our agile backlogs to see what's on the list for the future. They can look 1, 2, 3 years down the future and see what we're thinking. So that's a really unique part of this whole process that we've started here that we're really proud of. We end up managing a lot of it, even though every player of the IPT has their piece. I think it's really useful to make sure that you're bringing those warfighters in for sanity checks. Like you said, I've been here for a long time. I'm a reservist. The last time I went to combat in an airplane, it was like 3 presidents ago. So I rely heavily on the CAF and the guys that come in and out of the 85th and the 40th and the 42 to keep me honest, to keep us honest, because we have more than just myself here as the old hat reservist. So we really want this to be an airplane for the COCOMs designed by the warfighter. And we have no idea what the COCOMs want because we really don't engage with them other than Air Combat Command. That's our primary boss. So it's really important to get the guys from Indo-PACOM and the guys from USAFE down here, as well as obviously, your one CONUS base and then your guard units that we support as well that fly the post block, right? We didn't really mention this yet, but we here at Eglin only test post block aircraft, right? So about 900 F-16s in the USAF inventory, 111 are post blocks right now. And of that, you got about 6 guard units that fly those post block aircraft. Traditionally, they're kind of handled by AATC, that's your Air National Guard, Air Force Reserve Command Test Center, down at Tucson. We interact with those guys as participating test organization or they support us, depending on who's got the lead on what program. But they come with their own unique money and their own unique requirements, which make it interesting interactions, right? So. Yeah, man, like the Warfighter Council is something that I think is, it's still pretty new. We have a buy-in, we have an executive as well. So we have literally assigned MOA by all the 06s of the IPT that have agreed to let us work with agile requirements and get these things in. And we can change things that go into the airplane as fast as a couple of weeks. I mean, literally we're doing 2-week scrums. We have been doing 2-week scrums on the center display unit, which has its own core computer. Started out as a guard only program. Now it's matriculating down into all the CAF jets. So proud to say that, we've got Misawa, Shaw, and Spangdahlem jets all now with ESA and CDU. And those will start to propagate out to the rest of the CAF. So like I said, center display unit, you go from 2 little 5x5 inch MFDs to now you get the same 2 little 5x5s, but you get a big 6x8 MFD that does a lot of support and a lot of connections and a lot of powerful processing with some really cool things we have planned in the future. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's the this doesn't sound like a lot of hours to you probably, Rex, because you've been in the jet a few years more than me, but I missed out on 1,500 hours just by like 30 hours or 20 some hours. And I missed out on the ESA, flying a Viper with an ESA by about a month and a half. So I assume you've spent a lot of time. How is it so everybody who doesn't really understand it? So the APG-68 was a mechanically scanned array radar, and now we have an AESA, so the electronically scanned array, much more capable radar. So how is the old APG-83?
Yeah, man, it's great. We call it,
Nice.
Northrop called it the Saber, right? So it's a scaled agile
Yep.
beam radar. Um, in doing so, Northrop made a really good business deal here. They made a very, when I say very cheap, relatively cheap, but scalable radar that could go easily into the current spaces, and that's why the program is successful. So we don't require any new cooling. We don't require any new power. And those are the things that usually kill a major design system like, like the Viper, who Comac calls us the shock absorber of the calf, right? So the Viper is, the jack of all trades, the master of none, has always been. We've always struggled to get money. We've always struggled to find our purpose. But yeah, the ESA is really great. We got healthy with the ESA from a Juon turned Geon, which I still don't understand where the J comes in, since it's not joint, it's USAF only. But anyway, the guard through Northcom made a ploy to help for ACA alert units that they needed a credible piece of equipment to go defend the United States of America, right? With Homeland Defense mission, with base defense. So the first 72 ESAs went to all guard units, and that's kind of how the money dropped. And then that was essentially, you gotta break everything into phases. It's kind of like the underwear gnomes, right? From what was that? No, not from Snow White, right? They had phase one, steal underpants. Phase three, make profit. What's phase two? I don't know, but pretty sure we just put more aces in guard units. But anyway, yeah, we're in phase three now. We're making profit, and the Reg AF is starting to see some aces, which is great. So yeah, we've got probably about just under 100 installed, and the plan is to ramp up to a little over 400 into the post blocks. The pre blocks will have probably 100, and they'll probably get their last ESA right as their airframes are retiring, which, go do the math on that one. That's going to be fun to put a $2 million ESA radar in something that's going right to the boneyard. But hopefully we've got a plan to take those out and get them brand new radar put in the post blocks. But we'll see. And that's some of the things that we try to make sure that all of the people that we interact with kind of know the truth, and they think about like the repercussions of the decisions that are getting made. Going to the ESA though, man, it's great. So Northrop provided a super awesome product. We can SAR map now, and most of the ESA is essentially off the shelf parts and pieces of the F-22 and the F-35. So we're 80 to 90% common in parts between F-22, so APG-77, and I'd say about 80% common in software with F-35. The cool thing about our radar is it's modern compared to F-35 and in the APG-77 with F-22. We have better processors. So what we lack in power through the sheer physics of a small array, low power, low cooling, we make up with processing power. So we have some pretty cool things that we can do. Most of them are classified. I can't talk about them in this forum, but if you've ever flown a Block 50, you can pretty much bank on being twice as good as a Block 50 radar, just in overall physics, and then all the other stuff you can do now with SAR map at long range and being able to employ through the weather. So that's a pretty cool capability that the warfighters are going to get. And then when you start tying that with some of the other things that we're working on, I think the Viper could be pretty awesome. We are slated to still be around out to 2040, planning to sundown around 46. So yeah, we got a lot of work to do if we're going to try to keep up with China and Russia. So we're working as hard as we can
Yeah.
there.
Well, I was lucky to fly the Block 50s in Masawa and then fly the Block 50s at McIntyre for 52s technically at McIntyre. And I would always make this argument. I was like, the F-16 is the only platform that has a targeting pod, can carry harm, can go into the mez. It can pretty much do everything except have an ESA and SARMAP, and if you just put this on an F-16, it would be a game changer. Because if you go out to a red flag to this LFE, odds are the majority of the fighters are going to be F-16s because we just have the most of them. So if you put ESAs in every single one of those, it made sense to me that we would do that. Sadly, it just seemed like it took a long time to actually get them there.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics involved. I don't want to go there. I don't have a whiskey yet. I only talk politics with whiskey. Yeah, man, I usually come to work expecting a leg sweep every day. Some days I don't walk away feeling beat in the head from decisions coming from down high, and those are my good days. A lot of days you just see, I've seen it all, right? We started with capes a long time ago, which was when I first got to test in 2010. We started writing the ESA CDD. It's the capabilities description document. So if you ever want to learn about JSIDs, talk to an acquisition professional like Blake over here. But that, no kid in 10 is when we started writing down what the requirements were for the ESA. And here we are, just getting the first ESA to a Spang and a Masawa jet in 2022. Man, that system is 100% broken. I wish it was faster for the the dudette bros out in the calf. We're trying to make it faster, but it's just log into any podcast that talks about this. It's a problem that you and Bender are trying to tackle, and it's awesome, man. So that's why we're excited to be on your show. So yeah, the East is great.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yeah, man. I do have bad news for you. As a weasel guy, the HTS is essentially in sustainment and about to go, the way of the dodo bird, man. It's starting to age out. They're not putting a whole lot of money into what we call it DMS, diminishing manufacturing supply, like fixing some of the cards. So probably around 2030-ish, we start to phase out. And oh, by the way, that's when HAF and ACC and all the big bobs, right? Those are the guys that are telling us that seed is no longer the Block 50's primary mission. So Block 4, F-35, it's going to be the saving grace. We'll take over that mission, and then we'll probably be relegated to a little bit more of everything but seed, is what we're told.
Yeah.
So can't wait to plan for that.
I am. Yeah. Well, I imagine it'll be something like the, when the F-16 took the seed mission from the F-4, there'll probably be a period of time where, Block 50s are just harm trucks for 35s and stuff like that. But so Blake, one question I have for you is talking about acquisitions. So let's talk some of the constraints and then some of the good things in the acquisition side, and just kind of the process of developing and onboarding and taking something from an idea to getting it to the end users.
Yeah, I think especially where we are today, understanding the pacing threat is no longer Iraq 1991, even though we still fly those same missions. We're going up against a threat that is moving exponentially faster than we are. And so we have to get our acquisitions process faster as well. And what we see is the usage within program offices, even in particular the F-16, of adopting some of these quicker, what we'll call rapid protocols of getting stuff to prototype and then facilitating that even further and maturing it technologically, and then eventually getting it out the door. But the biggest holdup, the LIMFAC that I've ran into in just some of the projects that I've been able to sit on, is that that leaders, rightfully so and sometimes not rightfully so, will hold up manpower, will hold up other resources because they have their own legacy fiefdom to protect, and that's both good and bad. But if we are not flexible in how we look at advancing technology that's down the road, everything from next generation electronic warfare, in particular to the F-16 and other EW systems, EO/IR defeat mechanisms that we're constantly trying to integrate into some of our defense systems. That's what's going to bite us in the rear, is our inability to be flexible with how we manage our program offices to adapt to a faster opponent, and also the inability to move faster. And it's not necessarily the speed, because you can hit road bumps, trip, and you're going to screw your entire program over. And sometimes we see that with some of our next-gen weapon systems that we're trying to test right now, is that sometimes going 100 miles an hour isn't that great when you can go 80 miles an hour instead, and you'll be able to actually get your system off of your surrogate platform, or you'll be able to flesh out any anomalies in your system better. And so those are really some of the limb facts. I think we also need to do a better job just from an acquisitions personnel cultivation standpoint. You may not know this, but the Air Force is the only service that garners its acquisitions officers straight out of their commissioning sources, and they are unrestricted officers. Whereas the Navy and the Army and the Marine Corps, all of their acquisitions officers are restricted line officers, meaning that once they're in that career field, they're no longer coming out of it, but they do start in other career fields prior. So that gives them a leg up on knowing the operational environment that they are going to be the program manager for. A lot of your NAVAIR, your naval aviation acquisitions officers, are former naval flight officers or former naval aviators. I know a Marine officer who is a Marine Tactical Air Control Party member, or Anglico as they call them in the Marines. And so it's, as I was just saying earlier, it's very key for acquisitions officers to understand warfighting. And if you don't, you're very reactive instead of proactive as an acquisitions officer. And so with the Air Force having an organically produced acquisitions officer corps straight from the commissioning sources, we need to do a better job at imparting warfighting principles to our acquisitions officers so they understand better what's going on. Test is one of the best places to do that, because you are interacting with warfighters and folks who were warfighters, but they're still in the game. You are understanding the warfighting constraints. You have to understand the mission in order to make sure that the object you are testing meets the missionized spec for the system. And so test is a great place. And I'm very fortunate to be here. And so we have to find a way to proliferate that. And there's some programs that are going after that within the acquisitions officer world.
Well, I think that's kind of glaring in some ways. You look at, so MIDS jitters, MIDS J is a great example where we had this very long horizon on when it needed to be implemented, and nobody cared, until pretty much, the 11th hour, where the Navy was like, hey, this is a thing, we should probably knock it out in the near future. And sure enough, they did. And now we look like fools for everybody who's not tracking. So Link 16 is a data link that we use between our aircraft, so we can see where each other are and what each other are trying to achieve. And there's, there are limitations now because we didn't handle it well in the rollout of a new terminal. So it's unfortunate. And I wonder, that's not constraints, that's just maybe a lack of effort or a lack of knowledge, like you said. Blake, I'm interested to get your opinion on, so I know how Rex and I view the F-16, obviously flying it, but how do you view the F-16 more as like from your perspective, as acquisitions, or just the test side of it. Just what are its benefits and what are its kind of limitations?
Yeah, so whenever I was over the JDAM program, the F-16 was my preferred surrogate platform. Whenever we were doing upgrades to the anti-jam receiver, whenever we were throwing on new frontal sensors on the JDAM, that saved me a lot of money because the Viper is a much cheaper platform and it gets the job done. And so we would always turn to the F-16. And so initial perception of the F-16 is this thing is a workhorse, and it really is the workhorse. I'm a big reader on maneuver theory, maneuver warfare theory, big John Boyd fan, like the Marines of old. And I actually mentioned to Rex while we were flying the other day that what the F-16 brings and how it was designed was to be not just a workhorse, but it was designed to be a transient aircraft, an aircraft that can go from doing one thing to another, back to another thing very quickly to mess with the mental models of the adversary. And it's also a cheap airplane to procure, so we were able to buy in mass. And quantity has a quality of its own. Therefore, a transient aircraft with a lot of mass, to me, that would scare me as an enemy, to know that this very adaptable system in the hands of very competent people, there's a lot of them out there. Instead of having to defeat, let's say the 40 F-22s that we'll be able to throw up on a day one scenario because of the availability rate, my goodness, I also have to contend with hundreds of Vipers at most. And so I'm a very big fan of what the F-16 brings to the fight. Its adaptability, like you were saying earlier, being the only jet to go and execute multiple missions to include the seed mission and turn around and go and fight another different mission after that. That keeps an adversary on their toes. And if you can get into the moral and mental dilemma, the mental framework of the enemy and create dilemmas, that's when you can knock them off their heels. And so that's really what the F-16 means to me. It presents problems to the enemy if we treat the aircraft right. And what I mean by that is, not being 15 years late to the ESA game. It's not being, a decade late, really more than a decade to better electronic protection and electronic attack capabilities, and being late to advanced weapon capabilities. So if we can continue to outfit the F-16, which is incredibly adaptable from a software integration standpoint and from a hardware integration standpoint, this thing it's so lethal. And then you have hundreds of them that will be able to go and create all sorts of problems for the enemy from different angles instead of a few coming from one focused angle. And I tell you, that keeps people up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we are formidable because of the might of all of the things that we have, not specifically one platform, standing alone. Rex, I'd say, a lot of people you can kind of use maybe the platitude of like, this isn't your grandpa's F-16. So over the years, obviously the F-16 has changed so much from the first F-16, the A models that rolled off the line. And then obviously as of recently, you've been part of a lot of the testing and the development. What do you think have been some of the biggest game changers for F-16 capabilities up to now? And then what do you think is kind of in the hopper? What are you guys working on that is another game changer of the future for the F-16 to keep it in the fight till 2040?
Those are good questions, Vader. Lockheed's not going to like this, but the answer to your first question is when we went organic. The Eglin test enclave down here, CTF, we work in the same vault spaces with the Eagle dudes. And one of the problems that they still face is contractor, delays. Contractors are inevitably, you got to have them. They provide a specialty, but at the same time, they can definitely slow things down, right? So Lockheed has done some great work. They've made a great airplane, but they also made it pretty hard at times to kind of modify the software. So, yeah, Hill has been great. Their ability to rapidly adapt to our processes and help us with software enhancements have been fantastic. Auto GCAS has been revolutionary. It provides zero warfighter capability, but what it's done is it saves I think 10 airplanes and 11 pilots. Lots of podcasts about auto GCAS. And then the platform itself, like just the things that we have that we're fielding right now, is amazing. The CDU, the ESA, the things that we're working on, the fact that we're incorporating JASM, we're doing some pretty cool stuff in the future with JASM to make it more dynamic, because right now it's pretty static as a good strategic pre-planned tool, but as you know, the warfighter gets a vote, right? They can move pretty easy, so we're going to need to go and find them quickly and take them out, right? And you need a very specialized weapon to do that. It's been hard to get specialized weapons on the Viper. Right now, we're really struggling with one of our core critical strategic areas that we're trying to incorporate in the Viper is advanced weapons. JASM is one of them. AMRAAM has been around forever. Some of the guys around here joke we're just going to start calling it the MRAAM because it's no longer advanced. Raytheon will not be happy when they hear me say that, but we test things and we just state how they are. So the AMRAAM has been a great weapon, but the Air Force is super late to need on a new medium range air-to-air weapon. And then if you look at some of the things China is doing, they're outpacing us on the missile technology. And it's not for lack of scientists and engineers. We have the best in the world. We really do. It's the acquisition process that is stymieing the whole program. That's really unfortunate. If you set these guys free with some Cheetos and some Mountain Dew in their basement, man, they're going to build you some amazing things. If we just take a little bit of risk and start doing things faster. As an example, SAW, stand-in attack weapon, is going to be an F-35, essentially harm replacement in the future. There's some issues in development of that weapon that their primary threshold platform, the F-35, is going to struggle to test that thing for a while, right? It takes a while to get all not only the bulkheads modified so they can carry it, but the mission systems updated. So the Viper is raising our hand quietly in the corner going, we're happy to try to help you as quick as you can get this weapon evolved, right? If you want to carry it on our platform, if you want to do weapon seps, weapon separations, if you want to, essentially take that missile from PowerPoint up into something that is rapidly developed and get it out there. And if it never goes on a Viper, that's great. But at the same time, we want the Air Force to know that we're the people that they can count on to try to get some of this stuff done, because in the big scheme of things, it's like it is a team fight, and to get parochial about your desires and the things that you want in your platform, you just can't do it anymore. It's just not going to happen. You asked about like the future, so I don't foresee SAW really being a fully integrated weapon. Maybe it will be, I don't know. We're here to help the Air Force if they want. The thing I think will be really cool if we can pull this off, we're doing a demo with Starlink right now. So anybody's familiar, there's this pretty smart dude. He lives out in Texas called Elon Musk. I want to say he's got like something over 3,000 satellites in low Earth orbit now, right? And he's essentially built a commercial constellation of satellite internet. And the government is looking at potentially, buying a little bit of his bandwidth and using that to communicate. So we're gonna set up a demo where we send some encrypted video through space in these little RVs from Hill into an F-16 CDU cockpit. We've already we've already got the code. We're going to, run them through attack lane so they're encrypted, and then encryption, and then show the Air Force that it can be done. Hopefully we can find some money and find an antenna that's conformal. It'll fit on the jet, because right now they're buy off the internet COTS, if you will, commercial off the shelf. Antenna's a little too big for the Viper, and there's no good place to put it. But we're, that's something that Test is doing. We're trying to lead that effort with the development guys, and we're trying to convince all the other people out there, like, hey man, we got some good ideas. We could probably do this. We're working with the SDPE. I'm going to butcher their acronym, but Strategic Development Program Environment or Initiative. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared on that acronym, but these guys, it's a new process where the labs and the program office kind of work together. They bring money, they bring tech, and they try to get it into operational areas faster. You guys talked about SIBRs in the past, and we're doing SIBRs with a couple companies trying to find some new hardware maybe that will replace some of our new hardware. I know that I actually said that. Yeah, we're trying to get ahead of the DMS and Moore's law, where you start looking at your next thing even before you put the new thing in the jet, especially when the new thing's not that awesome anyway. Yeah, man. So I think Starlink's going to be great. I think if we can get our hands on some advanced weapons, that will help, especially as we bring on some of these programs of record, like the ESA, like iViews. So iViews is about a year from being in a developmental test aircraft here at Eglin. It's the integrated Viper electronic warfare suite. So no more podded EA pods. The plan is to put a new digital RWR on the jet that talks to the ESA on a pulse by pulse basis. And if you know how fast ESAs are, that's pretty stinking fast.
Yeah.
I'm a fat and slow kid, so I don't know what fast is, but everybody tells me it's pretty cool. And then, it's going to have internal EA. So that's pretty awesome not to have a pod anymore and have a modern internal digital DERFM jammer inside the Viper that will make it pretty awesome in a contested environment. We're still not 5th gen. We never will be 5th gen. We don't claim to be 5th gen. We are physically small, but we're not gonna win the RCS game in China or Russia fight, right? We're still John Boyd's Viper. We're still not LO. There's tricks you can do to get better, but without redesigning the airframe and making yourself a F-22 or F-35 or whatever NGAD is, then yeah, you got to do what you have, make with what you have. So yeah, I'm really excited for Starlink. I'm really excited for some of the weapons, and then definitely excited for this iViews piece of equipment. It's going to take a while to mature and get to the calf, but it is a 804 rapid acquisition program. We do have money secured for all the test assets. We're struggling to convince the half, to fund this right. And when they're struggling to field, they're trying to fund right now what I call, this is the best analogy, I love this one ever. So we're currently, our Air Force is at Mad Max level, and where half is trying to go in like the next 10 years is to Star Trek. And there's really no good ramp up in like the next decade to go from Mad Max to Star Wars. And Viper is, even though we're part of the Chiefs 4+1 strategy, Congress wants to go cheap with us and try to spend as little money as possible, and use our platform mainly as like COMEX says, General Kelly, the shock absorber to the calf, help with pilot, attrition, and make sure that we're producing fighter pilots to go fly this, next gen air dominance aircraft that's on its way. It's gonna be awesome. I promise. I don't know. All right.
Yeah, it won't be hit by all the acquisitions issues, I guaranteed. So it's funny, you kind of talk about that integrated defensive suite, where things actually talk to each other. Because somebody asked me how the fusion machine was in the F-16. And I was like, I'm the fusion machine.
That's right.
Like it's me like hitting a button and like flipping, okay, you know, I'm gonna turn this button, the switch now because this thing happened, and it's just non-existent. So it'd be really nice if these things were just part of, again, like the vast majority of the fighters that we own are the F-16. So it'd be nice to have those be really, really good. One question I have is, do you guys know who Stuart Wagner is?
I'm unfamiliar with the name.
So Stuart Wagner is the the software development officer? But he's the Mountain Dew dude. He is. I mean, he was in the Army for a little bit, but for a little while, he is a software guy. You guys have heard of the hackathons?
Yeah.
And so I had him
Yeah.
on the show a couple weeks ago, and he's saying exactly the same. Sadly, we all seem to be saying the same thing. Like, we need to do it faster. It needs to be, you know, the rapid portions, but he's talking about like, hey, there are people who can solve the problems that we don't let in the room because they don't have the classification or they don't have the need to know. And so he's creating these hackathons to provide people the need to know. And what he's doing is just giving them, even at the classified level, they walk in, they have the need to know, and they have the like the classifications, and he's like, hey, do what you will with this code. And it's like code from a 5th gen fighter. And then they say, oh, cool, look at all these things we figured out. And it's literally people like one of my buddies who's a fighter pilot software developer that they can just write that stuff because they're smart people and they understand how to develop these things, like you said. And they're not this behemoth of a company who builds airplanes who also is now writing code. You have people who are just code writers writing code, and surprise, they do a much better job. So no, that's exciting. It sounds like we're moving in the right direction. So that's good.
Vader, one of the things that Blake said earlier, I kind of break it down simpler and just say, you know, the key to success in this business, whether you're a tester or a program office guy or the Cheeto eating Mountain Dew drinker, is being multilingual. So that's why test is so frustrating and hard for a lot of people, because it takes almost a year just to even understand the lingo. And here I am 12 years later, I still don't know what half of it means. I am a big dumb animal and a knuckle dragger. I told you I'd screw this podcast app up, so sorry about that. But anyway, like just if you can speak the other folks' language and also get a little bit of perspective, it goes a super long way in this job. And if we can get our coders, the guys, you know, that are making the sausage, if you will, get them to speak a little bit of fighter pilot, it goes a super long way. Our chief flight test engineer, B-Hop, he's an amazing human. The dude has a 50-pound nugget. But what's amazing about B-Hop, he flies his own plane. He used to jump out of airplanes with parachutes and stuff until he had, you know, his kids. And I mean, the guy understands fighter aviation better than some of the young wingmen out there. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. You know, like we fly in D models, and I let him do strafe passes from the backseat. It was amazing. He is qualified. He understands it. He knows the Viper. We've started bringing some of our software guys because, you know, they're all cleared, and they're all government, and it's really easy getting backseat rides. So the government sucks at like giving monetary bonuses and taking care of civil servants. But if we can do the small things like bring them out to Eglin or Nellis, when Nellis had D models, they don't have any D models now. It's really, really cool for them to come out and actually like sit in the jet and see what the heck is going on and what we're doing. And that goes a long way. You know, we were just out at Hill, and we went for what's called a pilot early, like where we engage with our software design guys before they release the software. And we sit in their systems integration laboratory, the SIL, and we go through, and they watch us sit in the cockpit and run through some of the things that we're interested in. It's really awesome for them to go over the shoulder and go, man, I never even knew you guys would use that. Like, we always thought that thing was just like, you didn't even use that button. And then you have that dialogue right then and there and go, hey man, like, okay, let me tell you a little bit about air to air and why I'm doing this with the radar. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. So those are the interactions that need to happen. And it's hard to execute that on an active duty timeline in test where a guy's here for, 2.5 years, and it takes them just a year to even understand half of the acronyms. So really important to have a good core of contractor civilians. Afric, we've kind of cornered the market out here at Eglin. We've got a few really, really good Afric dudes, and most of the test directors, actually all the test directors for the 53rd Wing, they're all Afric guys. So Afric arts are really helping out, I think, the active duty. So thank you, active duty. I'll take a pay bump anytime you want to give it to me. There's your plug.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, that's good. I'm glad that, stuff is happening that is progress. And, we're getting people those good deals, and we're saying, hey, we can't give you the pay bump. We can't do some of the stuff the private sector can, but the private sector can't put you in the back of an F-16. So, there's that. But Blake, do you feel like there's a lot of rewarding stuff that you get to be a part of? Same thing, just it may not be monetary, but it just may be something that you get to enjoy seeing the spoils of your hard work.
Yeah, absolutely, Vader. Just like personal backstory, whenever I was coming out of Auburn, I had a pilot slot, but in the Air Force's good providence and grace, they took it away from me after I couldn't pass color vision in one of my eyes, and so it was like by sheer happenstance that I was able to come here to this assignment. So I'm married, I have 2 kids, and just telling my wife, I was like, wow, I said, just being able to hang out with these guys, pick their brains, learn from their experiences, and see what they do on a daily basis. That's reward enough, especially when they turn around or like during the debrief and say that worked per design, in a good way, not in a bad way. And to be able to see the young guys who are active duty at the 85th. And the 40th, who are fresh out of WIC or TPS, to see them before they step back out into the CAF, say, yeah, this is what we've always wanted. This is what we've always needed. I'm so glad we have this. And they're leading that integration with the rest of the CAF of these new systems and tactics. That's reward enough for me. But getting the opportunity just from previously as a test engineer to execute missions and work with all the cool tech, as cool as it can be from a government standpoint, during mission execution, all the way to having the opportunity to fly back seat with these guys and do some stuff from a mission standpoint up in the air. That's just, you can't put a price tag on it. So
yeah, it's so much fun. And it's, actually when I was leaving McIntyre, the 422 was like top on my list. And smartly for the test world, they picked Golden Lemaire because he's the best of us. So I was like, all right, good choice. Yeah, it's better than me. But so I didn't get to go to the 422, and but I always thought the OT side is just, I mean, it's the coolest part. It's, you get to test stuff out, you get to bring new things to the warfighters, and you get to, I mean, it's the ultimate chess match. You're trying to figure these things out and what's good, what's not good. I got a chance to go to AFRL at Kirtland while they were doing a HEL pod test, high energy laser pod. And we were ripping around and same thing, the engineers flew like an engineer thought a fighter pilot would fly. And we're like crazy closure, like ripping right across the top of these things while we're trying to use this pod. And they're like, we had no idea that's how you'd fly. And it's like, oh yeah, like we got stuff to do, we're busy people. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time. I apologize. It's been so much. But how can people kind of get in contact if they're trying, wanted to work with you? Just say, hey, thanks for all the hard work you do. How would you like people to reach out?
Yeah, Vader, thanks for having us. For me, probably the easiest way is LinkedIn. So Ben Rex Wysack on LinkedIn, pretty easy. Throw it out there. I'll say, hey, what's up? I'm on Instagram. I'm on the Book of Faces now. Trying to branch out a little bit and maybe see if who's going to exploit me or or whatnot. But yeah, you can find me pretty much. I don't have any fun or cool names, right? It's just Rex Wysack on any one of those medias.
Awesome. Blake?
Yeah, Vader, thanks for having us today. Yeah, you may have difficulty finding Rex. His profile picture on LinkedIn is a little outdated, but his face still looks the same. As far as my outreach, it's LinkedIn, and I just go by Blake Locklar. I don't write too many inspiring posts. I mostly just watch what people are doing, sometimes make memes out of it, and then contribute every once in a while. But looking forward to just proliferating this episode and some of your other work that you do, Kodiak Shack, on my profile. So thanks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate both of you being on here. You both have a open invitation whenever you come back, because it's always fun talking about the test world. So everybody, if you want to contact the show, info@kodiakshack.com, and check out our website, kodiakshack.com. Thanks again, guys, for being here, and have a good one.